Now that we have created a few components and some drawings of those components, we may want to put all of those parts together in an assembly. So there's a few different ways I can start an assembly. First, I can go to the File dropdown, and just like I made a drawing from a particular part, I can also choose Make Assembly from Part. But note that that's going to make my assembly from the specific part I have open, so in this case my bracket. If I want to start my assembly with a different part, for example, I could also just go instead File, New, and when my new SOLIDWORKS document window pops up, I can choose instead of part or drawing. Of course, in this case, I'll choose the assembly template and say OK. And now this has generated my new empty assembly file, and I can browse to whichever file I'd like. I have my begin assembly command prompt over here, and by default it's going to show you any open documents that you already have opened within SOLIDWORKS. So in this case, this is my bracket file. But if I want to choose anything else, I can just hit browse. Now this, of course, will open my Windows Explorer, and I can choose whichever files I'd like to start or create my assembly. Now, generally it's best to start your assembly with the very first component as your base component. And what I mean by base component is usually something that's maybe not moving, or maybe the main portion of the assembly, just something that's going to be kind of your reference point or your base point. So let's say I'm generating this kind of bracket roller assembly here. In this case, what might be a good choice is maybe not necessarily the bracket or the shaft, because those aren't really locked down necessarily, but maybe like a base plate or something like that would be a good option as my first component to throw into my assembly. So I'll grab my base component here and say open. And now you can see automatically I can throw in this base component anywhere in my assembly. Now another hint or best practice is to throw this again dead in your origin. It just helps for referencing information later on. But right now I can't exactly see my origin, so if you can't see your origin, you can just go up to your viewing tools, and this eyeball icon here again was to hide or show a number of different options. So if I hit that drop down, I have a whole number of options I can hide or show here, and one of those should be the origin. So if I click on the view origins there, now I can see both the origin of my component and the origin of my parent assembly level. So what I'd like to do is probably lock those two origins or put them right on top of each other. I can do that by hovering my mouse over the origin, and that will jump both the origins into place. Or my preferred method is if I just go up and hit the green check on my begin assembly command, that will also automatically jump my origins into place. And I'll hit. So now we have the beginning of our assembly. Notice the user interface again has changed slightly, but looks fairly familiar to our part mode user interface. The main change we may notice is again our ribbon tools have changed slightly and my commands have changed slightly, but also my feature tree has now turned into what we call an assembly tree. So it's slightly different. The icon here is slightly different, indicating that it's an assembly and not just a part. And then within that assembly will show me all of my parts. If I expand those parts, then I can see the features that were used to build those specific parts. So here, let's just take a look at throwing in some more parts or components into this assembly. So in this case, I probably want a few of those brackets and maybe my shaft component. So to insert additional components into an assembly, I just go to my Assembly tab and the Insert Components command. And again, just pretty much the exact same steps we just ran through. I'll just browse to any other components I'd like. Maybe now I'll throw in some brackets and place my brackets wherever I'd like. So now in this case, for anything other than my very first component, I probably wouldn't want to just hit the green check because I don't actually want my brackets to be locked in the origin as well. I want them to be assembled on my plate in the end of the day. For any other components, aside from your first component, I like to just kind of place them off in space, maybe near to where you're hoping they'll go in the end. So I'll place it somewhere about here. And then can just repeat that process. Alternatively, if you want to grab all of your parts at once, I can do that. So maybe I want to open 2 at once. I can just hold the Control key and say open. And it'll give me a list of all those parts in this list here. And now I can pick and choose whatever I'd like. What's kind of important here is to pin the command if you'd like. So right now, if I just place a single component, hit the green check, this command will disappear. But if I pin my command, now I can insert a whole bunch of components and the command will stay active. So what I'd like to do is add one more bracket. Maybe I'll place it over here. And now you can see my command has stayed on, and I can place many more brackets if I'd like. In this case, I just want the one. And then maybe I'll move over to grab my shaft. And I can insert the shaft as well. And once I'm finished with all that, I think that's all the components I really want for now. I can hit the green check to finish off the command. And again, take a look at my assembly tree. I have my assembly file with, it looks like, 4 parts within it. 2 brackets, a base, and a shaft.